Hello, fabulous friends and fans. I am your astrologer and your host, Nadiya Shah, and welcome to the 4th ever episode of Nadiya Shah Productions. This is so exciting for me. Thank you so much for being here. We, of course, on the show, every episode, get to celebrate someone who is notable and who is doing something very special in the area of New Age spirituality, astrology, or art. And today I am so pleased to present you with another astrology giant right here in Canada, Robin Armstrong. Now, I actually knew Robin Armstrong, or knew of Robin Armstrong, for many years before we met. And that is because so many people in my family had gone to him for a reading. And every time that they would talk about it, they would say, I had a reading done by the very famous astrologer, Robin Armstrong, and that has been the preface that is used constantly in my family. The very famous astrologer, Robin Armstrong. And of course, Robin has contributed so much to the Canadian astrological field. He is a pioneer where it comes to blending the Western Zodiac with the I Ching. And as such is truly a trailblazer, incredibly knowledgeable, also media darling, certainly has made his name out there in Canada. I am so thrilled to get this chance to finally sit down with and talk to the astrologer, the famous astrologer that my whole family already knows, the famous astrologer Robin Armstrong. Robin Armstrong! Yay! The famous astrologer, Robin Armstrong.
Uh-oh.
Well, as I just said in my intro, my family to this day still talks about you. So many women in my family have come to you for a reading. And every time they talk about you, they say, I had a reading done by the famous astrologer, Robin Armstrong. So they never just say, Robin Armstrong. They say, the famous astrologer, Robin Armstrong. And you certainly are. You've built an amazing career. So let's go way back to the beginning, because I love talking about the beginning and the roots of things. So how did you get started in astrology?
I have two starts. Okay, the first one, I found astrology kind of from the inside out. I'd spent a couple of years in India meditating and being alone. At the end of the time, I had visions. And the visions were about color and sound and how they could be healing. And they were just very alive and vivid. So that was the first real run-in with astrology, although I didn't know at the time it was astrology. I just had this vivid visual experience of things filled with a lot of understandings. I don't know how to explain it to this day.
Was it like an understanding of the cosmos? Were you thinking about the sky and our connection to it, or?
I'd spent a long time just being alone, without daylight, without seeing anybody, just meditating. So the visions that came in, it's like the thoughts that come into your mind when you're alone. That's kind of like your karma. So, how do you change the thoughts that come into your mind when you're alone? So when do you ever let yourself be open to a vision that's not, that's a bigger vision that you're receptive to?
That is so funny you mentioned that, because on my way here to speak to you, I was thinking about somebody that I knew who went on vacation and for 5 days in Cuba, right? A very spiritual place in the world. And during that time, she took this thick 1,000-page novel. And she told me that she read the whole novel in 5 days while she was in Cuba. And I thought to myself, can't you just sit?
Yeah,
Can you not just sit and be present and be there with yourself? I mean, that's somebody who would be scared to be on their own. But you obviously
most people today are. I mean, even the idea of a media fast for a day would be kind of confronting to most kids. But this was more than 40 years ago. So this was in the late 60s, and but after the meditation, this vision came. So when the vision came, it's like I got inspired. In California, a man named Kaylin Crawford did my horoscope for me, and when he did it, I just realized. Well, my first reaction was, "You mean I'm supposed to be like this?" On a personal level. But then I also, at the same time, I realized my vision was astrological. And he gave me a little book by Dane Ridger, The Practice of Astrology. And it was just a little book telling you how to approach astrology and that was the start in. And then after that, I just lit up and I read every book I could possibly get hold of for the next 2 years. Then I started a little bookstore and I got I collected every book that was in print, and I had read them at that time.
And were they all astrology
Yeah,
books?
all astrology books.
And so you actually had an astrology bookstore. Was that here in...
On Queen Street, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right here in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, that was in 70, the store. I started at my place in, and the library and the bookstore kind of started about the same time, about 1972, it's about 73.
So what I think is interesting about what you just said is, you know, I think it's a very universal experience for people to have a reading done and really resonate with it. That brings a lot of people to astrology.
Yeah, well, it's how you find out what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, until then, you don't know. You heard a little bit about it, and then nobody gets to astrology until you've had a crisis or a heartbreak or something. You think there's got to be a better way. There got to be something else. Well, some people come in for curiosity, but I really wasn't searching. He just did it for me. And all of a sudden, it was like, whoa! It just resonated with the visions that I just had, and made me realize it was astrological. I was still burning in them, and then it just, the astrology took the vision the rest of the way and made it make sense and come down to people's relationships to life, the circumstance. But yeah, people come in, you're trying to get advice. You want to get advice where you're going. If you go to a doctor or scientist, you're going to get Valium or something, or Prozac or something. You're not going to go there to get personal advice. You can go to a psychologist and go through, if you can afford it, and get a lot of sessions. But
with astrology, it's different because you're really the client, or you as the client are there to listen.
Well, it's the map of your destiny. It's the map of what you're capable of doing. And it's the map of your personality, your nature. So it's not long before you're talking to someone, they know you're talking to them. And then when you put it in time perspective, where do we get a time perspective in our life? You're only going to, if you took a time planning system, you're taught how to look at how to organize your material, how to make notes from an appointment book and stuff. They don't tell you when you're up or when you're down, and how to navigate through your ups or downs.
So what do you think it was? Do you think it was that you had had those visions, so when you had the reading done and were able to connect them to the visions, is that what translated it into this amazing career path? Because a lot of people have a reading done and it resonates, but they don't go on to make the kind of contribution you have.
When you get the inspiration of astrology, like when you get bit by the bug, if the bug bites you, you're in. And you're going to burn for a number of years. You're just going to have to get as much as you can because you realize, wow, it's all connected. And it's too exciting. Then you want to know everybody's sign, you got to go through the whole thing, and then it settles down. But it's kind of like music. When you listen to a song, you don't have a feeling about. So when you see the song that you are, wow, it starts making life a lot more alive than I'm just this job, or I'm just doing this, or it makes you meaningful.
There's this very fine line, and I know astrology has constantly had to navigate itself with this whole idea of fate versus free will. And so we can say that, we can see that family influence, but within that, would there not also be tools on how to transform it?
It's not just fate. Fate and free will are just two sides of the same coin. It's fate when it's going against you, it's free will when it's going your way. It's just that we're connected around it, and that there's meaning in that. That's the magic of it.
That's an amazing distinction. I never thought about it that way. So it's fate when it's going against you. It's free will when it's going your way.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm doing my will. Oh, it's against me. You know, like, how come I'm blocked? You know, but really there's a bigger process behind it all. It's interesting with astrology, because astrology is a language. You learn astrology, but it's just, the interesting thing is, what makes a good astrologer is not so much the language as the wisdom that the person's learned that they're putting through the language.
It's so true.
So that, but it does allow you to gather and organize your wisdom and your understanding of people a bit better, something new, and a new texture, new thing to learn. But the learning, that's a mental exercise. Finding your heart in the middle of it, or finding love or your heart in the middle of it, that's the purpose of it, that you can find meaning in your life, that it's not just what everybody's telling me to do, that I can come to terms with it, and it's not just outside things either. Because everybody's going to have their sorrows. You can't control it all. People are going to die. But then people die, and they haven't gone away. They're still in your heart.